How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the Fourth and Long podcast with your host, Alec Pecado, and my new co host, Bradley Walker. How's it
What's
going
going on,
tonight,
guys?
Bradley?
It's going good. It's going good. I hooked up with Alex through StreamYard, so I want to thank him for giving me the opportunity to be on here. So let's do it.
The first thing we're going to talk about tonight is conference realignment. And I'll let you give your 2 cents on conference realignment before I give mine.
Well, at the end of the day, in sports in general, it comes down to the mighty dollar. And we all know that certain teams move into certain conferences because um, of the money. And now there's four power conferences because the Pac-12 or whatever you want to call it is gone. And now there's four major conferences. I think probably in the next few years, there'll only be two or three. I think the next conference to dissolve will be the Big 12. Nothing against the teams that are in that conference. I just think between the ACC, SEC, and the Big 10, those I think at the end of the day, and this might be this, I think it's going to come down to the SEC and the Big 10. Those are going to be the conferences you have. You're going to have two big conferences. The teams in the North will be in the Big 10. The teams in the South will be in the SEC, and it'll be just the battle of the two best conferences in all college football. And someone can tell me if I'm incorrect, that I'm incorrect about the ACC and the Big 12. But I think between the Big 10 and the SEC, those are the two power conferences. How do I feel about it? I'm an SEC bias. I live in SEC country. I have my whole life. I'm from Florida. Um, I love the fact we went and got Oklahoma and Texas. And you know what? If the Seminoles want to leave the ACC so bad and they want to come to a real conference, well, come to the SEC so you play the Gators, and it's a conference game every year. So it's not a conference game anymore. But I don't mind conference realignment. Again, it's all about the buck, and I think at the end of the day, the bigger conferences will get all the good teams, and that's the way it's going to be when it's all said and done.
Okay, now I'll give my 2 cents. Some of the points you made there, I agree with. I just don't, and I want you to tell me what you think. I don't understand how it makes sense. USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, all being in the Big Ten. Those are West Coast schools, not East Coast. They're West Coast. I understand money, but when you're talking about conference realignment, why didn't they just go with Stanford and Cal to the ACC?
I think, Bo, what it comes down to, I think it comes down to the Big Ten, because you have USC and UCLA already within the conference. I think that they follow them, and nothing against Stanford, going to the ACC, but I think at the end of the day, the to me they made the right decision by going to the Big Ten. The football is better, and it comes the premier team. You have a national champion. The Wolverines are going back to, they're going to be they're the defending national champions, and they dethroned the SEC because it was the SEC for such a long time. It was Alabama and Clemson won a few years in the ACC, but at the end of the day, the SEC had the dominating factor when it came to winning national championships. But I think they made the right choice by going to the Big Ten. And the only thing with that is it's travel budget because now they have to come all the way to the East Coast, and now the East Coast teams have to go all the way to the West Coast to play them. So it's a travel budget thing too with those schools. But yes, I don't mind it.
Um, and then, so who do you think? What is the next domino to fall in conference realignment for you?
I think you're going to see Clemson and Florida State leave the ACC and come to the SEC. And the only reason I say that is both of those teams have, I don't know if the lawsuits are still ongoing or if the conference came into be. The ACC promised these schools money from TV rights, right? It all comes down to TV. You gain, the Big Ten has what multi-billion-dollar TV deals. They just took over CBS. That was an SEC station. Now the SEC moves to ESPN, and now the Big Ten is on Fox and CBS. So I think at the end of the day, the ACC promised the Noles and the Tigers money, revenue, and there's no ACC. I think there's an ACC network, but they're not getting the money that they were promised. That's my opinion.
The one other thing you're forgetting is not only does the Big Ten get CBS and
the Big Ten network as well.
Well, no, and they also get NBC.
Oh, that's right. Correct. Yeah. See, there you go. Okay.
Which to me, I don't understand how that makes sense because you put Notre Dame's put in whatever you want to call it now. Now Notre Dame, because that's Notre Dame's TV network is NBC. So now they're in a quote unquote struggle because they're going to have to maybe find a new TV network.
Well, and they too, Alex, too, they're the one team that's still independent that needs to find a conference. Because as you know, in the new playoff format, they cannot be above a 5 seed, even if they go undefeated. You have to be within a Power 4 conference, the Power 4, to get the top 4 seeds. So they cannot go anywhere above 5 because they're independent. So it's time for them to join the conference. And the conference to me that makes the most sense is the Big Ten because they have so much rivalry with Michigan and all of them. Why not? It just makes sense. And you're in Indiana anyway. So.
Well, they have Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue. I mean, it could make a rivalry with Ohio State.
Yeah, and being that you're in Indiana, you're in the middle of Big Ten country anyway. I mean, you're right along.
Yeah, because you got Indiana, Illinois,
Purdue.
Iowa.
Purdue is in Indiana. Yeah.
Northwestern's in Chicago. Which that's another thing we could talk about later on in the episode is the whole conundrum with where Northwestern's playing their home games this year.
Okay.
But the next thing I want to cover is the whole sign stealing scandal on Michigan. And you had mentioned something to me before we went live, how Connor Stallions is now a high school coach in Michigan.
Yep. He's a head coach, not an assistant coach. He's a head coach. So he basically said when he got hired that he goes, okay, well, the whole sign stealing thing, you can't blame me anymore. Now I'm in high school football and now I'm a coach and I need to focus on my team. My opinion on the whole thing, what is it? What do they say? If you're not cheating, you're not winning.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying.
There you go. I think at the end of the day, unfortunately, in every sport, whether it's pro or college, people steal signs. I mean, look at the Astros in Major League Baseball. It just got very complex with them, with the trash cans. And I was just at the Rays Astros series last week, and every time that Altuve came up to bat, they called him a cheater. So, but I mean, to me, Michigan just got busted. I mean, I'm not saying that every school out there is cheating and they're sending people in the stands to steal plays or defensive sets or whatever. But I'm telling you, there's somebody's in the press box or sitting in the stands. It's a scout that is reading these defenses and offenses and getting an advantage for whatever team they're representing. And like I said, Michigan just got caught. They just got caught with doing it.
Well, and then the latest I've heard, and I saw this the other day, is apparently Michigan hacked into Ohio State's practice film, and that's how they got all the signs and were using them against Ohio State. And I saw it the other day before I went into work.
Well, again, that's the thing too is so again, there's the cheating thing again with going
The
in
old, as I like to call it, the old elephant in the room.
well, and again, the same thing too, Bud, with the now with the NIL deals, you can't tell me right now that there were no schools that were paying players under the table to keep their mouth shut before the NIL came out. Everybody was doing it.
I can name you one right off the top of my head as of recently, and we're going to talk about it in a few minutes. Iowa with the offensive lineman from Bama.
Yep.
Proctor. And he jumped in the portal and went to Iowa, but then apparently he never actually went to Iowa. He got back in the portal and went back to Bama.
Yeah, and what is it now? Iowa is facing 1-game suspension, their head coach.
On Kirk Ferentz.
Yeah.
But that's for Cade
McNamara, the kid from Michigan. Michigan's former quarterback. Yep.
And like you just said, you can't let's talk about a little bit about NIL and how NIL, from what we've heard, how it works. So, as you were just saying, Kirk Ferentz is going to be suspended for 1 game for recruiting violations towards the recruitment of Cade McNamara. Why did it take him this long to find the recruiting violations?
There's the question too, and it, in all honesty, and nothing against Iowa, and nothing against Coach Ferentz, is it really going to matter? I mean, Iowa, and I have this conversation with my co-host who's a Wolverines fan. Iowa's like the fly that won't go away. Like, they always are around. And no matter, and Kurt Ferentz has been there for like 25, 30 years. He's been on that. He'll be like, the only way they're going to get rid of him is if he says, I've had enough, or he gets sick. And God love him, that doesn't happen. But they're going to get him off the sidelines is he's going to have to quit himself, because he's built a legacy at Iowa. And yeah, I mean, is it really going to matter? So he sits out the week 0 game or week 1 when they're playing a cupcake game to beat up on somebody, to pay a small school to come play them in Iowa, or they go to their school to play, whatever. But no, I don't think it's going to hurt them. And like I said, there's another thing too, where that stuff is going on. It's just who leaked it or who caught it and then said, okay, well, let's say, hey, I'm going to report that so I get him in trouble. At the end of the day, it's not really going to matter. I mean, if he got suspended the whole season, that's a different story. But a game, it's not going to hurt the Hawkeyes.
No, and I agree with you that the only way Ferentz leaves, and I've talked about this on previous episodes of this podcast, the only way Kirk Ferentz leaves Iowa is, one, if something really bad happens, like the whole situation that happened at Michigan State with Mel Tucker. If that happens, or if he retires, that is the only way he's going to leave Iowa. He's not leaving Iowa any other way, because his son already they fired his son, and I thought that was going to be the tipping point where he said, okay, you're going to fire my son, you might as well let me go too. But no, I guess, like you said, he's built a legacy there, and there's no use for having him leave if since he's built that legacy. That's like Saban. Everybody's like, oh, Saban should have been fired after Alabama missed the playoff.
Well, and they said for a long time that Alabama's going down.
For the life of me, but Saban, and I have my I'm not going to say gripes, but I have my things that make me not like Saban, and it's mostly when he does his interviews and how he goes off on the reporters. But I have mad respect for Saban and all the success he had at Bama. Even though he was a pain. He will be a Hall of Fame, college football Hall of Fame coach.
Absolutely. Well, and he might have been in the Hall of Fame, Bud, prior to going to Alabama, because he won a national championship at LSU. And I don't know if he won a national championship at Michigan State. I don't know if they ever made it to the championship game. But both of those schools prior to him to going to the NFL for, I don't know why, but Alabama is where he came back to Tuscaloosa, and us SEC fans are of course happy to see him leave the conference and retire.
I am too, as an Ohio State fan.
And now the guy that we're starting to get the same kind of dislike for is Kirby Smart at Georgia. And then as a Gator fan, I don't hate Georgia. I've never hated the Bulldogs, and that's my rival in the conference, but I have no problem with the University of Georgia. None whatsoever.
That's unlike me. I'm an Ohio State fan. I can't stand to look at Michigan. And I'm not even supposed to say it, but I have to be professional when I'm on YouTube. I can't say that the team up north. Nobody's going to know what I'm talking about. Unless you're an Ohio State or a Michigan fan.
Right.
Those are the only two fan bases that don't know what I'm talking about. And same way with, and let's briefly talk about Georgia and and I'm going to use quotes for this, the issues they've been having off the field. Legal issues.
Yeah.
To put it nicely.
There's a bunch of legal issues. I think every day.
The latest one, Ra Thomas.
You hear of a new one. Last I heard, Alex, Kirby, I guess they had a team meeting where the coaches and players met. I guess, in all reality, it may come with them winning so much. And it might be just the fact, egos or popularity or whatever however you want to spell it out, is what is causing these players to do what they're doing. Because you have to be an idiot to have a chance of either getting kicked off the team, which a lot of these players have, or losing your scholarship, when if you are, quote unquote, going to be going to the next level, even if you were to come back after allegations or a crime that you committed, NFL teams are going to go, yeah, you have a record, buddy. I don't know if we can trust you or not. And there's a lot of players that have fallen in the draft because of their off the field shenanigans. So we'll see. But yeah, it's not going to hurt Georgia. They recruit just like Alabama did. Kirby gets, 5-star, we lose half our team to the NFL. Okay, well, the next guys up are just as good or better than the guys that were here. So, and the Gators and the Dogs play on a neutral site. We don't even play in Gainesville and in Athens. We play in Jacksonville every year. It's the largest outdoor cocktail party, as they call it. That's the quotations that they give that game. And it's not, they want to take it back to Gainesville and they want to take it back to Athens, but it'll never be that way because the city of Jacksonville makes too much damn money. So there's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I wanted your opinion on, because I saw that. I'm like, there's absolutely zero way you could have this game every year, and it either be in Gainesville or Athens. Like that, just Jacksonville. And I went to college in Jacksonville, and I had my friends all 4 years I was there, and because I had extra tickets to the game. They're like, Alec, you want to go? And every year I always had something that the weekend of Florida, Georgia. So I was never able to go. But they told me, Alec, it was the best time they ever had.
Yeah. I've never been, as a Gator fan, I've never gone to the game against Georgia. But yeah, that game's not leaving Jacksonville. It's going to take a lot of teeth pulling to get that game out of Jacksonville to send it back to the respective campuses in Gainesville and in Athens.
Okay, so next we're going to get to our bold predictions, and I'll let you go first. Because I've got a
Okay.
bold prediction that you might like, but I want to
Bold
let you go
predictions.
first.
Bold predictions.
Part one, because we're going to do more tomorrow night.
Okay. Wow. Are we referring to like the 12 team playoff, or are we referring
No,
to
just
just?
overall bold predictions. Like, it could be anything.
Oh, okay. So because I have.
Anything to do with college football. And you get
Oh,
4.
okay. So here I'm gonna take this right here. I'm gonna take 3 teams that I think are gonna take a step back this year. So they were
Okay.
good last year, or good in the last few years. They're going to take a step back this year. And I'm going to start with a team that I, as a Floridian, cannot stand because I'm a Gator fan. And I think everybody knows who I'm going to.
Miami,
No, it's not the Hurricanes. They're on my list too, but that's not. It's
Florida
the Seminoles.
State.
And ladies and gentlemen, I heard every FSU fan whine and moan when they did not get in the college football playoff last year. I have a friend of mine who is a diehard FSU fan who talked my ear off, and I'm like, dude, what are you going to do? I'm not on the NCAA committee. I can't change their pick. I think they take a step back because their quarterback position. Jordan Travis was great until he got hurt, and they lost a lot of defensive guys, offensive guys. I'm not saying that they're gonna not make. They're not going to be in the ACC championship game. Correct me on that. I just think that they're not going to be as good as they were a year ago. I still think they might win 10 games. They might go 10-2 this year. And they might go undefeated for all I know. But I think they'll take a step back. Miami's the other team I think will take a step back. Their head coaching, Mario Cristobal, he's in over his head. He is in over his head in Miami. You guys saw it last year. Here's a guy who called a running play when your team is up. They fumble the ball. Georgia Tech recovers the ball and beats them. Oh, by the way, Georgia
I'm
Tech's
gonna step in for a second. I was watching that game when it happened, and I'm like, why aren't you just kneeling the ball or running it? Why did you throw it? There's a minute left. You're told in high school to, if you're up by 7 with a minute left, run the ball. And I guess
Correct.
Miami didn't get the
memo.
They didn't get the memo. Continue.
So I think Miami starts the season off against the Gators. I think that game is going to be a lot more competitive than a lot of people think it's going to be. I think the Gators win only because they're at home. If it was in Coral Gables, where the Hurricanes call home, that'd be a different story. And the other team, which is the team that I probably hate the most in all of college football, and they're in my conference, is the University of Tennessee. I have never been a Volunteer fan. I don't like Rocky Top. I don't like the checkerboard end zone. I don't like orange and white. However you want. The only good thing that came out of Tennessee is Pat Summitt. That's the only good thing that came out of the University of Tennessee. So
I thought you were going to say Morgan Wallen.
No. I mean, and
he's a Tennessee boy.
One of their former quarterbacks, I think, is with the Patriots right now. I'm a Patriot fan.
Joe Milton.
And he
and everybody's saying that he should be the starter over Drake May.
I don't know about that. Well, again, but you know what? I could sit here right now, Alex. We're what, a few days away from the college football season opening up, and I could be all 3 of these teams could be in the college football playoff, and I could be totally wrong right off the get-go. But those are my predictions as far as teams that I think will take a step back this year.
Okay, so you get 3 more. What are your other 3 bold predictions?
My sleeper teams this year, I'm going to go Utah. Utah seems to be that team that they're there. They're always there. They were there when the Pac-12 was there. And I think that they're going to take another big step forward again. They're a team that is always seems to be overlooked. And I don't know why, because they're a good football team and they're a good program. I think that continues. In the SEC, I'm going to go Ole Miss. The Rebels, I tell you what, they've been kind of looming around, and now they don't have the SEC West and East anymore, so they've broken up the bracket. But they were the team that went toe-to-toe with Alabama, toe-to-toe with LSU last year. I think they are on the up. And then, of course, my boys in Tampa, USF. I think we won 7 games last year, 6 regular season games. We rolled Syracuse in the Boca Raton Bowl. I'm predicting an 8 or 9 win season this year for USF after looking at their schedule, and they will beat Miami in week 4 at Raymond James Stadium. That's my prediction.
So those are your bold predictions.
Yes, sir.
Sleeper teams.
Yep.
Okay, so let me get to my bold predictions. I think you're going to like this first one. My first bold prediction, which is number 4, is I think DJ Lagway's first game starting at Florida will be one of these 3. Tennessee, Kentucky, or Texas.
I would take Texas out of those 3 if I had to pick. Yeah.
Number 3 bold prediction. South Florida will either upset Miami or Alabama.
How about both?
That would make that bold prediction even better.
How about both? Yeah.
Number 2, I think there's at least 3 SEC coaches that will get fired this year. Billy Napier.
Okay. Yes.
Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, unfortunately.
They don't win. That's.
And then Sam Pittman at Arkansas.
He's on the hot seat. We did on my show, Alex. We did one. We went through all the coaches, all the programs, and he's the one that was on the hot seat was Pittman. He was definitely on the hot seat. Yep.
And then my first bold prediction is to follow up what I just said about 3 SEC coaches getting fired. It is Sam Pittman gets fired after the LSU game.
Okay.
And then my sleeper teams. Number 4, USC. I think people are underestimating the moves they made on defense in the offseason, getting a new defensive coordinator, getting a lot of defensive guys from the portal, and, of course, on offense, Miller Moss at quarterback. And I think that's going to set USC as a sleeper in the Big Ten. Not saying they're going to win the Big Ten, because I've already done my Big Ten preview, and I think it's going to be Ohio State that wins the Big Ten. But I know everybody has their predictions where they say either Oregon or some people have said Penn State, and I just don't. I can't see Penn State winning the Big Ten.
No, they have the easiest schedule, I think, in the Big Ten this year, because I don't think they don't play Michigan. I know this year.
They do play Ohio State.
They have it the easy. What do they play Ohio State in Columbus, or they play in Happy Valley?
Happy Valley, and that's going to be the whiteout.
I was going to say that's probably going to be the whiteout game. Okay.
My number 3 sleeper team, and this is one of my favorite conferences, the Sun Belt. It is Texas State.
Okay.
Because they've got a former South Florida quarterback, Jordan McLeod, who is the reigning Sun Belt Player of the Year. And I think that McLeod and Texas State are a sleeper team, not just in terms of being a regular sleeper. Maybe they're a sleeper for the playoff.
That'd be cool.
Number 2 sleeper team. It's in up your neck of the woods. Auburn, SEC.
The Tigers, okay.
And I'm going to make I won't say bold prediction, but I'm going to make a prediction right now. I think Peyton Thorne's going to get benched this year. Because as a Big Ten fan, I've seen the Peyton Thorne experience. And Auburn fans, I'm sorry, it is not. It's not. It's a sight for sore eyes. Put it that way. To put it nicely, it's not something you want to be looking forward to. I think one of the two freshman quarterbacks they have is going to get playing time this year. And I'm right there with you with my number one sleeper team, South Florida. Is there a way you can mute that music in the background?
Sure. There we go.
I just don't want to take the chance because I'm on YouTube. I don't want to take the chance of my video
getting copyright. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think Alex Golish was the right pick. Just
he was because all the other coaches we had. I was there the one year we played. We had UCF at home, and I think it was Charlie Strong was the coach. Ooh. 4th and 1, and instead of going for it, and this is right before halftime, instead of going for it, you punt it. That just shows me that you were conceding that you were going to lose the game, and you gave up. Now we get to upsets. Who's your 3 cover picks, upset picks, and over-under?
All right, so I picked 3. The first one that I'm going to choose, Miami versus Florida. Miami's a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is 53.5. Again, I was just talking earlier about Mario Cristobal and his interesting decisions that he makes as a head coach. And I did not know this until the other day. Miami has never won an ACC championship. I didn't know that. I thought that they had, but they have never won one as a team, as a program. And Billy Napier is also on the hot seat as well. And they have the toughest schedule. The final, I think, 5 or 6 games are like murder's row. Ole Miss, Alabama, Florida State, you get on the list. LSU, it's tough. So if Florida's going to get bowl eligible, they're going to have to go that first 5 games of the season. They're going to have to go 4-1. They're going to have to. They're not going to go undefeated. I think they will beat Miami. I would take Florida in the points, and I would go the overall total 53.5. I mean, again, the hook, that's the dangerous thing is if you go under, they have to score under 54 points. But if you go over that, you got to score 54. Can those two teams score 54 points? I mean, you look at it, yeah, I mean, you're looking at 27-27 to make 54. So I'm going to go over. I would go over on that game. So I'm going to take Florida in the points and the over on that one. The next game I have is A&M and Notre Dame. Now, one of the toughest stadiums to play in college football is at College Station in Texas. It's one of the bigger stadiums. Obviously, Michigan and Ohio State have a big, over 100,000 people. But it's one of the hardest in the SEC, and A&M has been pretty good since they came into the conference. But I think you have Notre Dame, who every year, and they're in the top 10 again this year. I think every year, sometimes they get ranked too high because of what they did a year ago. And I'm going to take A&M. They're a 3-point favorite, so I'm going to take the Aggies, and the over-under is 46.5. I'm going to I'll take the over in that one too. I think A&M, being that they're at home, I think that's a good way to get off the start of your season to beat a top 10 team. And we'll see how the Irish do. It's always a big enigma with them to figure out where, what they, stuff like that. So I'm taking the Aggies. And the other one that I have is Penn State and West Virginia. Now, Penn State's a 10-point favorite. The over-under is 51.5. I'm going to take the Mountaineers in an upset. Penn State, again, has one of the easiest schedules in the Big Ten. And yes, they should roll West Virginia, but I don't think it's going to – I think it's going to be more competitive than it is. I like West Virginia. Take the under – or take the points there. And I think the over-under 52 points. The Big Ten's known for their defense. I'm going to take the under on that one. But those are my picks right there.
Okay, let me give you mine. So my first upset, and you might give me a funny look for this one, but something tells me that this team's going to pull an upset. Stanford plus 7.5 against TCU. I understand it's a former Pac-12 school going to the ACC, playing a Big 12 school, but I just feel like this is a winnable game for Stanford. And I get where people are saying that everybody's forgetting that TCU just a couple years ago was in the playoff. This isn't the same TCU team that had all those good players when they made the playoff. And don't get me wrong, Sonny Dykes, darn good head coach, but I think Stanford might pull an upset. You'll like my second upset. We agree on this. I have Florida. And the line when I looked at it this morning was 3 plus 3. I have Florida plus 3 to upset Miami.
I'm with you. I agree.
I think since it's in Gainesville, I think that gives Florida a better chance to win compared to it being in Florida in Coral Gables, which I've been to a game in Coral Gables, Miami, 2007 when they played Ohio State. That stadium gets very loud. And then my last upset is Miami of Ohio plus 4.5 to upset Northwestern. Okay. Now, I understand it's Big Ten, and I'm supposed to pick Big Ten teams to win. But I had no expectations for Northwestern last year, and I was surprised how good they did. I'm scared to have expectations for them this year. And that's why I have them on upset alert in week 1. Now, my cover picks. My first one is North Dakota plus 27.5 to cover against Iowa State. Now, notoriously, and I've been told this by numerous people, you never want to take an FCS school to cover a point spread of more than 20 points against an FBS school. I say otherwise, because anything can happen in college football. Mm-hmm. For all we know, North Dakota could upset Iowa State. Do I think it happens? No. But I think there's a better chance of North Dakota maybe covering the spread. My second cover pick is Syracuse minus 17.5 to cover against Ohio University. Now, in this spot, I did have Ohio State, but I don't like their point. I don't like the point spread. It's minus 50. And I think that's absurd, but I understand because they're playing Akron, and Akron is terrible. So I put Syracuse in here because I like their point spread a little bit better than I do Ohio State's, 17.5. I think that's doable to cover. And then my last one is Wyoming plus 6.5 to cover against Arizona State. And again, would you consider Wyoming a West Coast school?
I would. I mean, they're not technically on the West Coast, but they are in the. Are they on Mountain Time or are they on? I don't know if they're on Mountain Time or Pacific Time.
I think they might be Mountain Time, but
okay.
They're going to Arizona State, and Arizona State's going to be probably the worst team in the Big 12. So, and I like that 6. I would take Wyoming plus the points. So then my over-unders. My first one is and I did just to poke fun at the team Oregon's playing. It is Idaho. The point total is 62 and a half. Now, again, I get told by people that you want to really be careful when you're betting on a game and the total's over 60, because there's a chance you could be wrong. But I'm willing to bite the bullet here and take Oregon, the total of Oregon and Idaho, which is 62 and a half, and take the over. Because I feel like Oregon is going to just score at will. Because Idaho's a FCS team, and Oregon's probably paying them a lot of money to come and play them. The most embarrassing thing would be if Oregon gets beat by Idaho, but I think we all know.
Upsets happen like that.
Yeah. Upsets do happen, but this would be like Michigan getting beat by Appalachian State.
Correct.
My next one is New Mexico versus Arizona, and the total is 54 and a half. I'm taking the over, and it's not because I think New Mexico is going to score a lot of points. I think Arizona is going to score a lot of points. I think Arizona might be up 45-0 by halftime, and then they put their back up to them, and they just keep scoring. And then my last pick is an under. It is Sam Houston and Rice. And the total is 49 points. I when I did my research, I looked at how many points each team scored last year. And these teams were particularly not really good at scoring points. So I like the under 49. And then the last thing we can talk about is, where do you stand on Northwestern having to play in their, I think it's their practice stadium this year?
Yeah, see, I didn't know that, bud. I think that sucks. Because, I mean, obviously your practice team probably doesn't seat as many people as your stadium does. So you're going to cut back on fans, which alumni, they're not going to like that because they're the ones that pay the bills. But, you know, that sucks. And when it comes down to it, can they win 6 games? Probably. I haven't looked at their schedule, so I don't know off the top of my head.
I did my Big Ten predictions, and I think I have them winning between 5 and 6 games.
Okay. So they possibly could be bowl eligible this year. Okay.
And they play Ohio State, which they I think everybody knows that they're not going to beat Ohio State. It would take a minor miracle for them to beat Ohio State.
Yeah, I was going to
even though it's in Evanston at Northwestern. But where I stand on it is, I feel like they're playing a couple of games at Wrigley Field. Why can't they make that their home stadium for the next 2 years while their new stadium's getting worked on? I understand the Cubs have to play there, but their season's almost over. Why can't you make a deal with Wrigley Field and say, here, look, here's Northwestern's home football schedule. Can we play 4 or 5 games here, maybe 6, and then have maybe 1 or 2 at the practice stadium?
That would be kind of cool to play at Wrigley Field. That's one of the few baseball teams I haven't got to visit, but that would be cool. I mean, the only thing is, it would just be just like it was back in the day when the A's and the Raiders played at the Oakland Coliseum. It's just it's hard with the field because you have to leave the baseball diamond still out there. But I don't think it would matter, and you get a bunch of fans. I mean, a lot more fans in your practice field. I guess it would come down to the Cubs agreeing to letting them tear their outfield grass apart.
In that luscious ivy wall.
Ivy wall, correct. So, Yeah, it depends on if they will agree to that. But yeah,
Or
you're
I had another idea. Let him
okay.
play in. How far are they from the Bears Stadium?
Evanston from Chicago. I don't think it's that far. I mean, they could play at Soldier Field. Well, I mean, the USF they play at Raymond James where the Bucks play, so they share a stadium
Yeah.
with the Buccaneers. So,
Why couldn't Northwestern do that?
good question. I
I
mean,
mean, that would make, I don't know, it'd make a little more sense than having them play in a practice facility that's on Lake Michigan.
yeah.
But
See, if I was Northwestern, I'd be in contact with Chicago and say, guys, can the next 2 seasons can we play our home games at Soldier Field? And I want to say, didn't they do that a few seasons ago? Weren't they playing some of their games in Soldier Field? I think they were having stadium issues or something at Northwestern.
stadium renovations.
There it was. Okay, because I know they played at Soldier
I
Field or
think they played like 3 or 4 games at Soldier Field and then played like 2 or 3 at Wrigley.
and
I
then
know
the Bears getting a new stadium.
Missouri, or is it? No, I think it's Kansas is playing games at Arrowhead this year because their new stadium is being worked on.
Well, that would make sense. The
Yeah,
Jayhawks.
because they're not that far apart.
Yeah,
But
let me
yeah, look.
I'm going to look it up how far Evanston is from Chicago. Let's see. Evanston to Chicago. Here we go. It is, as Google tells me here, it is it's under an hour. It's a 51-minute drive. So it's not
That's
like
not
it's,
bad at all.
no, I mean, that's an hour
Well,
drive.
I say that, but that's all depending on traffic. And as we
Hey, I
know,
don't even know.
Illinois traffic, I've heard, is not the best.
Yeah, so that comes down to that. It comes down to on a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday morning when you leave Evanston to go to Chicago, and that drive back home might be the pain in the butt drive might be the drive from
Home.
Chicago back to Evanston might be the one that
Mm-hmm.
might be the biggest problem. Yeah.
And then let's wrap it up with some. Do you have any upsets for week 0 off the top of your head? Because I have one.
I'm going to say West Virginia beats Penn State. There's my upset for week 0 right there. I'm going to say the Mountaineers.
Well, even that's a week 1 game. So you don't see any of. That's week 1. I was saying week 0, but if you don't, I have one for week 0.
Go ahead.
And it's one that everybody's been talking about. Montana State upsetting New Mexico.
Okay.
Can you see it happening? Because New Mexico is supposed to be one of the worst teams in college football, up there with Akron, Kent State, and Ball State, all those teams. Could you see Montana State beating New Mexico?
I can. Let me tell you the reason why I say that. Because there's a lot of teams that look at what everyone's saying. Bulletin board material. Hey, they suck. They're the worst team. They can't do anything, and you underprepare, and they take advantage of you're not preparing properly. And as we all know, I think it happens more in college football than it happens in college basketball. In college sports in general, it happens more than it does in pro sports. But upsets are more prone to happen. And if you catch a team in the right week in college football, anybody can win. I don't care if you are the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs. If you come out against somebody who is supposed to be a cupcake and you lay an egg and you get beat, and that's the biggest game of the season for that team winning it. So yes, I think it's absolutely it's a possibility that could happen. Absolutely.
And then the other one, I don't think it happened, but I have it in the back of my mind. Florida State getting beat by Georgia Tech in Dublin.
You had me pick a week 0. That was the game I was going to take. You took it right from me, but that was the game I was going to pick. Georgia Tech again is they're like Iowa, like they're there. No one predicts them to do anything. No one.
They're that mosquito,
That
or as you like to say, bug that won't go away. You
won't go away, and
you slap them and you think, okay, they're done.
And you're in a neutral site. You're going out of the country. You're in Ireland. You're playing in a different country where you have to get used to a different time zone and everything else. And why not? I mean, Georgia Tech beat Miami last year. Now, it's because of Miami's stupidity that happened. But on the flip side of it, can they beat Florida State? Yeah, because again, as I told you, I thought FSU was going to take a step back. They lost a lot of players to the NFL, a lot of them on defense. They have a new quarterback, and yeah, I mean that could be the game and that's what I think that's the one that starts the week 0 off. Isn't it supposed to be at 7:30 or something at noon? Okay, there we go. Okay,
noon game, and that's the first game of the year.
Okay, yeah, I could see.
And then same here. And in week 1, everybody's saying they think North Dakota State can beat Colorado. Don't get me wrong, North Dakota State's one of the best FCS teams. But they got to make the trip from North Dakota to Colorado. That's not an easy bus ride.
No.
If they're gonna do bus ride, if they're gonna fly, it's not easy either.
I don't see that happening, and with all of the I don't know if you want to call it trouble or whatever behind the scenes with Coach Prime at Colorado. Obviously, I think this is a big year for him, even though I know it's only year 2 for him. But no, I don't see that happening. I think the Buffaloes will, again, they're at home. They have the advantage of having North Dakota come down, or Dakota State coming down to Boulder. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Buffaloes get off to a good start. It's going to come down to when they get to conference play, can they be better in the conference than they were a year ago? Because they're switching. They went from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, so they're switching conferences too. So you have new teams that you haven't seen, like your Kansases, your TCUs, your Iowa State,
Kansas State,
Oklahoma State. You haven't seen these guys yet. So yeah, it's going to be a new block for Coach Prime and the Buffaloes.
And then the other one is people, and I just saw this the other day. People are talking about how Cincinnati's win total is 5.5, and I've done Big 12, and I don't think. And I've seen Brandon Swordsby play. He was at Indiana last year, and he lost his starting job. And they think just because he went to Cincinnati, that Cincinnati all of a sudden is going to be this juggernaut and they're going to be better. I'm sorry, I don't see Cincinnati winning over 5 games.
I think since Luke Fickell left and went to Wisconsin, I think that was the worst thing that could have happened to that organization, because they were so good in the ACC where USF played.
AAC.
And when they switched and they went to the Big 12, because they went with Houston and UCF to the Big 12, when Luke Fickell left and went to Wisconsin, it went downhill. They may win under 5 games this year, being in the Big 12.
And Satterfield's another guy that might get fired.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. And I tell my YouTube people, if any of these coaches do get fired, we will have an emergency podcast and make a video about it, stating who we think might be candidates to take over.
Okay.
If and when any of these coaches get fired, which I said earlier, I think Nabier's the first one that's probably going to get can, even though I know a Florida fan, and they said if Florida goes 5-7, that Napier's not going to go because I guess they got a new school president, and he thinks that they may give Napier one more year. But if they go 4-8, 3-9, 2-10, that Napier's
gone.
As good as gone. The writing's on the wall. And I'm going to give you a very bold prediction. I think Napier gets fired. And I don't want this to happen. But I think he's going to be a head coach within the next 3 years. And he's on the staff at Ohio State. It is not Chip Kelly. I think Brian Hartline might be the next head coach for Florida. Even though he says he wants to stay at Ohio State and eventually be the head coach when Day leaves, I don't buy that. As I've been told, money talks. Money's a big part. If he gets a lot of money from the boosters at Florida or anywhere, he'll take a head coaching job and leave.
Yeah.
Look at O'Brien. He lasted all of less than a month at Ohio State because Boston College came around and got halfly dipped and went to the NFL, and they needed a head coach, and their boosters paid. I got to think their boosters paid Bill O'Brien a boatload of money to come coach them.
Yeah, for the Eagles. Yeah,
Boston College is another school they're not. Since Matt Ryan, they really haven't had that good of a record in football.
Mm-mm.
But they're not the laughing stock of the ACC.
Mm-mm.
They're far from it. For me, the laughing stock this year, the ACC, is probably going to be Wake Forest and Stanford.
Well, the Demon Deacons are always they're interesting too. Like everyone puts them near the bottom, and then somehow they find a way to win 6 games.
Dave Clawson. As we've said twice on this show, they're that bug that's just they're there.
They
stick around.
Yep.
You think you got rid of them, and then you look up. Oh, they're 5-3, 6-4. How did they get 6 wins?
Yep. It happens. There's always one team in every conference.
Stanford, I'm sorry, Stanford fans. Y'all are not going to – you're in the ACC just to be in the ACC. You're in there for academics, pure academics. Cal, on the other hand, they're going to – I think Cal's got a chance to win at least 6 games in the ACC. And I'm going to wrap it up right here with this. I was doing some research the other day on schools that have the longest travel mileage, and for the season, and 2 out of the 3 schools were Big Ten schools. Ohio State and Michigan were 1 and 2, and then I think it was either Cal. No, it was Hawaii. Hawaii was number 3.
Okay.
Which makes a lot of sense. Because you go from, I think they're in Honolulu, and they're in the Mountain West. So you got to go San Diego, so California, Idaho, New Mexico. Am I forgetting anybody in the Mountain West?
No, I think you pretty much. I mean, because they got to travel 6 games from Honolulu.
Oh,
so, yeah,
and San Jose State.
Okay. So 2 trips to California, 1 to Idaho, 1 to Arizona. Yeah, I could see how that could be traveling.
I feel bad for some of these kids. It's like, why?
Yeah.
But I think that's going to wrap up the podcast today. We will see y'all back here at 8:00 tomorrow night.
Sounds good, bud. Yeah, I'll be back. Yep.
See y'all at 8:00 tomorrow night. Have a good one, Bradley.
You too, bud. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yep.